Hi everyone. So today I would like to explain about the last chapter, chapter 11, Grading and Student Evaluation from Language Assessment book by Douglas Brown. So let's get started. Okay, first about philosophy of grading. What should grades reflect? Okay. Guidelines for selecting grading criteria. First, be consistent with an institutional philosophy and or regulations. All of the components of a final grade need to be explicitly stated in writing to students at the beginning of a term of study. And then if your grading system includes items improvement, behavior, effort, motivation, recognize their subjectivity, and then considering allocating relatively small weight. And then calculating grades. If you pre-specify standards of performance on a numerical point system, you are using an absolute system of grading. Meanwhile, relative grading is usually accomplished by uh, ranking students in order of performance or percentile ranks and assigning cut-off points for grades. And then pay attention into the two figures in the slide. We talk about teachers' perceptions of appropriate grade distributor. Two conclusions were drawn from this insight. First, teachers may uh, hypothetically subscribe to a pre-selected set of expectations, but in practice may not conform to those expectations. And the second, teachers all agreed they were guilty of a great inflation at the ALI. Their good nature and empathy for students predisposed them toward assigning grades that were higher than ALI standards and expectations. And then institutional expectation and constraints. Okay, so as you bear in mind this and other cross-cultural constraints in philosophies of grading and evaluation, it is important to construct your own philosophy. Philosophies of grading, along with attendant cross-cultural variation, also must speak to the issues of gauging difficulty in tests and other graded measures. How do you gauge such difficulty as you design a classroom test that has not had the luxury of preloading and pretesting? The answer is complex. It is usually a combination of number of possible factors. First, experience as a teacher with appropriate intuition, and then adaptness at designing feasible tasks, and then spatial care in framing items that are clear and relevant, and then mirroring in class tasks that students have mastered, and then variation of tests on the test itself, and then reference to prior tests in the same course, a thorough review and preparation for the students for the task, knowledge of your students' collective abilities, and then a little bit of luck. And then what do letter grades mean? Every teacher who uses letter grades are a percentage score to provide an evaluation, whether a summative and of course assessment or on a formal assessment procedure, should use a carefully constructed system of grading, assign grades on the basis of explicitly stated criteria, and then base the criteria on objective of a course or assessment procedure. And then we moved into the alternative to letter grading. Most of the alternatives to grading for formative tests and other sets of tasks have been discussed in previous chapters. A more detailed look is now appropriate for a few of the summative alternatives to grading, particularly self-assessment, narrative evaluation, checklists, and conferences. So about the self-assessment, the focus is specifically on the feasibility of students commenting on their own achievement in the whole course of study. And then the narrative evaluations, what does such a narrative look like? Here are three narratives, all written for the same students by her three teachers in a pre-university intensive English program in the US. And then the checklist evaluation. A checklist with brief comments from the teacher, ideally followed by a conference and a response from the students. As you can see in the slide, that is a form used for midterm evaluation in one of the high intermediate listening speaking courses at the American Language Institute. And then for conferences, perhaps enough has been said about the virtues of conferencing. You already know that the impracticality of scheduling sessions with students is offset by its washback benefits. And then some principles and guidelines for grading and evaluation. About the principle, you should understand that grading is not necessarily based on a universally accepted scale, and then grading is sometimes subjective and context dependent, and then grading of tests is often done on the curve, and then grades reflect a teacher's philosophy of grading, and grades reflect an institutional philosophy of grading. Cross-cultural variation in grading philosophies needs to be understood and so many more. And then about the guidelines, the following principled guidelines should help you be an effective grader and evaluator of students' performance. First, develop an informed and then comprehensive personal philosophy of grading that is consistent with your philosophy of teaching and evaluation. And then ascertain as institution's philosophy of grading and unless otherwise negotiated, conform to that philosophy so that you are not out of step with others. And the design tests that conform to appropriate institutional and cultural expectation of the difficulty that students should experience. And then select appropriate criteria for grading and their relative weighting in calculating grades, and then communicate criteria for grading to students at the beginning of the course and at subsequent grading periods, such as midterm and the final. And then triangulate letter grade evaluation with alternatives that are more affirmative and that give more pushback. Okay, so that's all about the chapter 11. Thank you for your attention and see you.